Hey everybody, welcome to a Clickstuff Patreon exclusive training class, Heroclix training class. This has been recorded for the month of September 2019. This is your host Daniel Powell speaking, and if you'd be interested in attending these classes or getting exclusive early access to these classes, check us out at patreon.com/clickstuff. $5 and above gets you into our exclusive Discord server and early access to the Heroclix training classes. So today we're going to talk about a few different things that's kind of been on my mind post Worlds. It happened about 3 weeks ago, and some of the new things that are coming up and coming out. So I want to talk a little bit about pacing and equipping objects and kind of what that means for any given team, and how that can relate into your pacing during that first few critical turns. And then I want to talk about ranking the storms. This is something I've thought quite a bit about the past few weeks as I've been looking at different teams, and we've been thinking about Rock Cup teams, and I've been thinking about regional teams that we have coming up at Big Bang on October 12th, and just really fall kind of regional type teams, where the different storms fit in. So let's talk a little bit about that. So let's start out with the storm discussion. And I think what is annoying a little bit is that the storms are not all on realms yet. So we'll have to switch back and forth to the other screen here to talk about X-Men, the animated series Storm Prime. So let's scroll all the way down and get her up and ready, because she is 23B. So I kind of want to talk a little bit about why I think Storm Prime took a hit as well when we get to that discussion. So let's pull up the recent win rulings as well. Because that factors into the discussion here. So let's pull up the recent ruling discussion rules last week with Pulse Wave, which is relevant for her. So if I activate Pulse Wave with a multi-base character, can I pick and choose which square to draw a line of fire from? No, Pulse Wave requires you to target all possible characters within range and line of fire. This means you must count and draw range of line of fire from all squares of a multi-base character in order to target the maximum number of characters. So Storm, being a Prime Storm from X-Men, being a 2x2, that really makes her be able to Pulse Wave more characters. But it also makes it to where it's harder to get a solo target Pulse Wave off with her. Now, a lot of it is, a lot of folks are talking about how good she is on Colossal Retaliation, and in practice so far, I have found that very hard to pull off. Storm is a Starburst sized character, so no giant reach. So she has to be called out and placed and then be able to retaliate, staying within 5 squares, and be able to make a close attack. So it's going to be really hard if someone with a long range, say an Astronomer or Uni, or just anything, a Cyclops on a main force, just any one of these really long range characters, because you cannot TK up and then retaliate now. TK up, call out, now retaliate with these new retaliators. So she has to be able to be TK'd up, or be able to be called out, be within range of the call out character, then punch, then retaliate, or then replace retaliate punch with a punch, then use the mind control, and then put possibly running shot, pulse wave, or sidestep, precision strike. Now, what I think really happens to her is that the 25-point dial is extremely susceptible to incap, poison, or even Kobik action tokens from the Cosmic Cube. Generally the Days of Future Past IDs are really safe to call out, because when this character is hit, when the opposing character hits this character, so sorry, TK wouldn't help, but anything like the Cosmic Cube or Poison would immediately return the character to your sideline and heal the attacking character one click. So even calling her out on the Days of Future Past ID is not quite good enough at 25 points. So I think that lowers down, say, how good she can be as a low point call out character, and then being able to only do 11 attack, 2 damage on that call out line is really hard. And I think a little bit of this discussion will turn into kind of a ranking of primes as well, as I want to get into that some. So, she's got the free knockback, but that's going to be conditional. There's a lot of reducers now. There's a lot of combat reflexes and charge. So, I don't know. I think she's really conditional for the upside you get at 25. It's just really hard to pull off. And she doesn't ignore her stealth either for her knockback ability. Like, I would think, that's going to be really good. You can knock back a Q Prime, or you knock back an Unseen or something. And Q Prime obviously doesn't have stealth, but something like a Unseen has stealth, and it's only within 6 squares. So this all goes back to being able to call her out and be close enough to actually do something with her. I think it's just extremely conditional. Now, that's all at 25, right? So let's talk about 150. 150 Storm, to me, comes out with, she comes out with the running shot, pulse wave, but with this idea that she has to be able to target from all squares. If I'm going to be calling out a pulse wave character, I'm probably going to be calling out the Phoenix Storm for the next 10 months or so. Now, after Storm, this Storm is likely to retire in 2020, likely. Maybe the Storm Prime comes up again. But to me, this is still probably one of the top Storms. For me, the top Storms are going to be Phoenix Storm and Asgard Storm. Asgard Storm, I think I am not sleeping on her. One, she comes out as a call out with leadership. That's really great for pacing. And we'll talk about that a little bit more here in a little bit. Calling out a leadership, having that 4th action, whenever your Groot or whatever was providing your leadership may die fairly early, especially if it's a Groot. So it comes into play that this Asgard Storm is even better for those reasons. And I think I would confidently say that Asgard Storm should very quickly next month mean the end of Colossal Retaliator Swarms. Now, does that mean the end of Wendigo Swarms? No. but for a lot of cases, I think it means the end of like a lot of Colossal Retaliators. Because you can get her range up to a 6, triple perplex her range. And one thing that may not be so apparent is if you're going to be able to get rid of a bunch of Colossal Retaliators, or something along those lines, you can pulse wave your own guy. So if I was to sum up how to use Asgard Storm in one piece of advice, don't be afraid to pulse wave your own guy. Obviously you got to make it worth it. If you have a printed 18 and the Retaliators have a bunch of printed 17s, heck, who knows? You may not even hit your own guy. Not something to count on, but if you're calling her out with a Kobik, if you're calling her out with a Black Adam, you might just have to risk it for the biscuit. Someone like, again, a lot of what I do is I play Uni, but Uni picking stealth, Asgard Storm isn't going to bother Uni in that situation. Just one more way that you can be able to use this kind of storm, and this applies to the Phoenix Storm too, but you're going to be able to use her more effectively if you can think about in those situations where, should I pulse wave my own guy? Maybe I need to catch 2 of my guys, but that 5 points, it can score me 10, 20, 40, 50 points. Maybe even more. So what's your risk versus payoff situation in a lot of these deals? So that's just something to think about when I think about Storm. Now it comes down to, at the end of the day, I think Storm Prime fits in right here in third place. Only because that 25-point dial is super, super conditional, in my opinion. Now, we do have a couple of other storms to talk about. This one is neat, but it's just really outclassed the LE Storm. I think she's the Wakandan Storm. She's got the carry. That's just not that great. She's got just a 12 attack, 3 damage. The Asgard Storm comes in at similar points with 11 for 3 damage. That's just going to be, I think, just way more useful in more situations. And then I think even below that, the Wolverine Regenesis Storms. The only way that these storms are useful, in my opinion, are going to be just as 50-point callouts that will allow you to inspire something with Energy Explosion. Now, I did that in the Winamap. If you take a look on the channel here, the Friday 9/26 Winamap, I was able to give Phoenix, the blue Phoenix with triple bolts, 10 range Energy Explosion to take out a bunch of Colossal Retaliators. So that was cool. But now I called out a 150-point storm to do that because the Asgard Storm wasn't legal. So I think in short, the Phoenix Storm, Asgard Storm, definitely your top 2 call-ins. And let's not even forget that Phoenix Storm has the ability to destroy indoor terrain, indoor blocking, or has the ability to punish an opponent for breaking outdoor blocking terrain. Now, this has never come into play, the outdoor blocking, but the indoor blocking won me my, pretty much won me my game pretty early in top 16 against Micah. He left his trader open, and I did a 6 damage single target pulse wave by knocking out 1 square of blocking. So, super useful trait of hers, that the Prime Storm just can't get around. So let's talk about maybe where Prime Storm fits in against just other primes. So let's get these guys out of here. Now I would say I did pay the iron price for a storm. I traded a bunch of stuff away. I do recommend getting her if you have the ability to do so. But you might be able to get by with her. It's really up to you, right? Take what I've talked about here today and make the decision for yourself. So I think there's a couple of primes that just really aren't playable in Modern now. Pretty much most of this list. Now the Big Mac Daddy is going to be your Q prime at 30 points. Now of course, he won Worlds. He does the dice stuff. It's a fantastic piece. But you've got to be willing and able to play this Q correctly. With the rise of what I would say rise of Asgard Storm, and even rise of the Prime Storm, Q has to be able to get that 30 points of value out before it's too late for him. Now you've got, I think the top prime, if you play Uni, is going to be Prime Thanos. He was still a play. He won me pretty much my top 32 game after I had gotten popped. He knocked an Astronomer off of elevation. This guy is just way invaluable for the pop in that last-ditch situation. Now, 90% of games, the Eternals don't matter. This guy's just as good as Thena. Top dial, if you want to play him, if you want to play Q with your Uni. But it comes out that this guy is just way too invaluable on the pop. So, with the rise of Wendigos, you can never count out how good Prime Professor X is. But I think he might fall right below Prime Colossus as a call-in. I think he is, 17B? He has a great 100-point line and a great 25-point line. That Charge Quake with the Colossal Retaliation, 11 for 3. This guy's a great Retaliator killer. Now, of course, so is Brood X, but a lot of guys are going to be coming up to you. So just pick and choose your prime wisely here, whether you want a close combat prime or the ranged prime. Now, Prime Colossus can also inspire Charge or Impervious, and I think that's just way better than the shape change inspiration of Professor X. Mainly because this guy right below him, Wendigo heals up 1, he's got Battle Fury, shape change, pretty tough these days. Because I've already played against a couple of Wendigo swarms. I did one in the Winamap last week. It's pretty tough when those guys get to start healing up and going to Battle Fury when you've got a shape change equipped. But Prime Colossus giving out Charge, giving out Impervious for 25 points. That's where that guy really, really shines. I don't see a lot of 150 point or 100 point teams Even as something like a Kobik team or I can't say Black Adam because it's a prime, but even something like a Kobik team, I don't think would ever call him out at 100. They'd probably stay calling him out at 25. Now the wanted ID, this guy is fairly safe at 25. They have to be able to outwit his impervious and then poison him. So that's just one extra step that protects him a little bit more. Now he is susceptible to the Cosmic Cube situation, but you need to be ready to mitigate these sort of things if you're going to call these guys out at very low dial with their wanted IDs. So let's talk about a few other primes. Definitely, again, Q and Thanos are at the top of my list. Then probably Colossus, Storm, then Professor X. But all of those guys are around 3, between 3 and 4, right? And really we're talking about sideline primes even at this point. Q Prime, then Black Adam Prime are going to be your 2 main force primes. Now I think Black Adam still, I really want Black Adam to be better. This guy is a ton of fun to play with. You've just got to be positioned well to play him. I still think that at the end of the day, he's still a tier. I hate using tiers, but he's like almost tier 1, right? Like a really good player can make him tier 1. But if you're just relying on his rollouts, or you let him get solo target pulse waves, or you let him continually get hit, then maybe he's not the piece for you to play. But I think realistically, those are your playable primes in competitive play. But man, we have a whole sideline of all of these competitive primes, and then I'd be remiss to say Vulture, being the gatekeeper, is out there. But Vulture, it kind of fits into his own build, right? Vulture doesn't really care about sideline so much. Vulture doesn't care about call-outs, and Vulture doesn't really care that it's missing out on playing another prime on the main force, right? He's just kind of his own thing. Most of the time, Black Adam and Q teams can mitigate Vulture's effectiveness pretty easily, but Vulture is still got to be the contest there, right? We didn't see any Vultures in top 8 or maybe even top 16 at Worlds, so maybe he's due for a comeback, but I don't really think enough stuff helps him in the new set. And that new TK ruling is really tough on him as well, so I think maybe Vulture goes all the way down to the bottom of primes. That's a tough one. So the new ruling is, can I just choose to activate an object action without a target so I can just KO the held object? And the answer is yes. So you can just call out Jean Grey, which we've talked about in past videos, and just TK their Arc Arms and blow them up. So now you've spent 3 points to get 10. And then you've just completely destroyed the effectiveness of their team, should you be able to win map. So, I don't know. It's just, I played Vulture in the finals of the Winner map this week. So it's one of those things. He's there. He's got to be dealt. You got to have a plan to deal with him. But unless you're just playing Vulture directly, a lot of these other primes are going to be making your list and make you have to decisions, right? Professor X versus Storm versus Colossus. A 30-point Colossus. Man, I've been asking for one of those for a long time. Something sub 75 points or so, and now we've got several of them. Maybe somebody will play Star Fox with Mjolnir again. Wouldn't be a bad play, I don't think. So I think that's about what I wanted to talk about with primes. Make the decision that's best for your team. Get Storm if you can get her at a good price. But be aware of all these other primes that are really good. And all of the other storms that are really good. So don't just stay focused on how all the things that Storm Prime can do whenever there's other storms that can do a lot. I think the one particular thorn in the Asgard Storm's side, and I'll finish my discussion on that, is Proteus here. The G014 Proteus, I should say. Because he has a stop with super senses on it, so he can still roll out and then heal. When Asgard Storm goes to multi-target pulse wave, or even just a regular one can do that, or energy explosion. So I think this G014 Proteus, even if he doesn't get errated, I think he's still extremely playable. Just because of that Pyrocosmic monster keyword, ruler keyword, 10 points. The ability to heal above the stop line, the heal above the starting lines. He's a fantastic piece. So don't be sleeping on this guy as well, as sort of the counter to the counter of Asgard Storm. So let's talk a little bit about pacing and what does pacing mean to me, and kind of some of the things that I had learned from my team at Worlds. So at Worlds I had played Uni and Unseen, which I've kind of grown a little bit soft on. Unseen again, just because of how soft those rollouts seem to do for me. Those 50-50 rollouts were not 50-50. Maybe Unseen with Q Prime would have been a little bit better, but I didn't really have the points for all of that. Now, one thing I found to be completely ineffective with my team was I'd played the Nightbringer and the Remaker Ring, and I'd made a little bit of a misjudgment on how quick the meta, or how aggressive some of the meta would be, because I didn't have as many rounds against Gardner as I probably should have going into this tournament. So Nightbringer was ineffective because Gardner punches, and I did not have enough time to get both rings equipped. So Gardner was ultimately the biggest weakness of my team. Obviously, 3 out of the 4 top 4 teams had Gardner. So a lot of that was, maybe a misread of the current meta going into Worlds. Now Gardner's not going anywhere with X-Men, so that's talking about pacing. I had paced myself wrong on this team to get beyond top 8 at Worlds because of the dual rings. Maybe something like a symbiote would have been better, and then not having to rely on Walking Woods as well, because there was a matchup or two where the starting area was filled and I couldn't get my Walking Woods, which slowed my team down a lot. And I talked about this on the Winna map, and this is where the Blue Phoenix just having a themed TK takes care of a lot of pacing concerns that I have with my team, because I can TK the object back to Uni, meaning that I don't have to worry about Kobik Trader filling their starting area, not getting me Walking Woods, and me not being able to equip a shape change source, either Remaker or Venom Symbiote, onto Uni. So that's where you constantly have to have an update, or thinking about what's the meta going to be like, how aggressive is it going to be. I think we continue to go into a extremely aggressive meta with Gardner. Even things like Onslaught, being able to phase up, do free attacks. The Hawkeye Jason Vanguard with 2 to 3 Jean Greys. There's even Astronomer Mind Gem, or where Jean can be TK'd. Do you think things like Isaac's team, if it has another character that's 75 points, because other friendly characters may target Jean when using mind control. So things like a Trader or Astronomer can target Jean with mind control, use the dice manipulation between the Q and the Trey lane, and potentially get 2, 3, 4 attacks off with Jean Grey, right? No damage reducer these days. No damage. What was that? DDM? Yeah, damage deduction modifier, whatever it was. So she's going 11 for 4 repeatedly, and then doing her own action. So Mind Gem's big. Starro's big. Starro targets her, generates a Starro fight. She packs the Starro fight up. So all of this comes into play with how aggressive the meta is going to be, and how you need to make sure that your object equipping, your turn 1, your turn 2, is going to be effective, and setting up your team construction for the rest of your team pacing for the rest of the game. Because an early pacing mistake can make it to where you're going to be behind, right? And if you're behind, typically they're going to be able to get points out of you, which no one wants to be in that sort of situation. So I think my point would be, 1 object, maybe 2, if you're going to have the reliable leadership and the reliable way to double equip objects, right? Either Astronomer doing a double TK, Walking Woods may not be as viable as they used to, but being able to get out there and get your objects, get them equipped, and be able to use them, right? So, if you look into that even further, if you think, well, I don't need to equip my object for my team to be as effective, well, then maybe you don't need to include the object at all. So think about your team construction and how the team uses every part of the team. I run into a situation where the Uni team is at 295 points currently, Uni 5.0, and I think about how am I going to use that last 5 points. Well, I don't want to just include another object on the team. I mean, I could include a Venom Symbiote and a Remaker, or maybe another type of ring for Uni, because he's the only standard character on this particular version of Uni 5.0. But a map bonus doesn't make a lot of sense, because I don't want to go to the map if I win it. And then a terrain only makes sense for certain matchups, depending on how prevalent the 0 ring becomes. So it is really a lot of thinking and testing that I have to go through for what like that last 5 points comes into. And a lot of the times in the back of my head, I'm thinking about how does pacing come into play. What is that turn one? What is that turn two? What happens if I win map? What happens if I lose map? What's my placement look like? How is this last 5 points going to help with set my team up for success, right? So, those are all things to think about. And for those of you that are listening to this early in the Discord, just feel free to ask if you got any questions on that. I think that's about all I have to say on these two subjects today. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to ask on the Clickstuff Facebook page, Clickstuff Heroclix podcast discussion group. Send us a message on YouTube. We'll be glad to help you out. As far as that goes, check us out, patreon.com/clickstuff, soundcloud.com/clickstuff, facebook.com/clickstuff. And thanks everybody for listening today. Have a great rest of your day. Talk to you all next time.